We have established contact with my co-host and buddy, Frank Morano, who joins us right now, and also our good buddy, Dr. John Huber. Hey, guys, how are you?
Hello there, John. How are you?
All right, good. I heard them both at the same time. Guys, lots going on. I don't know. I guess there's a ton of places where stats are being given out. I try to go to the source of the CDC. And on the CDC website, updated this weekend, it says there's only 47,000 cases of COVID. And I'm wondering where I'm missing something because I keep hearing 80,000, 70,000, 80,000 going up every day. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Well, what I've seen is CDC actually has two sites, and that's driving a lot of conspiracies. And one of them, supposedly, they're a few weeks behind in their data posting, which doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But that's what they're claiming, because I read an article this weekend about that very same thing, that they have two different sites. One of them says double the other one, basically.
Yeah, it's strange. I think. Can you reset John? Maybe.
Yeah.
Hey, Frankie. I think Dr. Huber is frozen there. Yeah. But
yes, no, we tried to resolve that during the commercial, but
there he goes. There he goes.
You were nowhere to be found when we were working that out.
Me? I've been sitting here. Hey, I know John's camera looked like it was frozen.
Well, we were trying to talk with you and gauge whether you could see his frozenness or not, but you were not at your chair, not around.
Oh, I see. Available. I see. Unavailable. So, Johnny, what, aside from the empirical financial disaster this is for business owners, what's the psychological toll on people sitting there? They thought they had a good life savings. They thought they were set up. They're making enough. Now they're at literal zero.
Actually, that's pretty accurate right there, and it's creating a lot of fear, a lot of speculation. I mean, I read last week in one of the economists is suggesting or estimating at least 40% of small businesses are just going to shut down and not reopen because they want to, save what they've got for their retirement, for what's left of their life, and it's devastating. 40%. I mean, we estimate that 80% of Americans, 70 to 80% of Americans work for small businesses, and now you got to lose almost half of them because of this. That's gonna hurt a lot of people, and there's a lot of fear, a lot of paranoia, and we're suffering through a national trauma here. And I've actually had patients who are starting to show signs of post-traumatic stress disorder from this.
Boy.
And I think this is gonna carry on for some time now.
Frankie, are you there?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's very disconcerting.
So right here in New York, Mayor de Blasio came out with, made a whole bunch of statements encouraging people to take photos of people who weren't being socially responsible and send them in to the government, to the 311 and report people. I think people are starting to get a little sick and tired of other people minding their business, and if they want to go outside their house a little and they think they're being responsible, when does the boiling point come on that?
Well, that's a scary thing, to be telling on, narking on your neighbors and people you don't know. It's a lot of what was happening in Nazi Germany. It's like, tell us where the Jews are hidden and things like that. And
that's a bit extreme. I don't think it's like that at all, John. I mean, it's actually a world of difference. One is actually saving people's lives. One is finding people to round them up and shove them into gas chambers. It's a little bit of a difference.
Well, you could argue that, but I still don't trust the data that we're getting on this virus if it's really saving people's lives. Look at the poverty level. Every percentage point of poverty we lose, we start losing people because of low access to just food and normal nutrition. And the death rate versus the unemployment rate right now is actually greater, I understand from the data I've read, than what's happening with the COVID virus. So where is that where it's not actually killing people, and where is it where wearing a mask or not wearing a mask actually saves people's lives. If you're infected, you can transmit it. That mask will stop that. But if you're not infected, the data's not there. It doesn't necessarily protect you. In fact, it could make it worse because you're adjusting the mask and touching your face all the time.
Well, I'm not a big mask proponent, but as I understand it, the argument in favor of masks is less about preventing infection from the person wearing it, and it's more about preventing people who may have the disease but be asymptomatic from spreading it to someone else. But John, let me ask you about the toll this is taking on relationships, both in China and here in New York. We've seen trends of domestic violence and divorce on a massive uptick. Tell me why you think that is. Is it just a function of people being cooped up with one another? Is it a function of taking your stress out on your partner? Why are we seeing both an uptick in domestic violence and divorce?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's being cooped up. I think it's also, a lot of people have been living their life through screens, through their cell phones and their laptops. And now all of a sudden they're forced to have to face their family, and the frustration levels and the lack of skills of interacting with other human beings has gone down significantly. Not only, with the divorce rate, the domestic violence, but also child abuse has gone through the roof. And then we turn around and our hotlines are overwhelmed, and there's a 20 to 30 minute wait on a lot of the national hotlines right now.
Wow. So, Johnny, I guess down in Texas, they took a different approach than we did up here in New York. New York was like full 100% lockdown. I know Texas was a smattering of different ideas.
Right.
And but for the most part, people I was talking to in Texas were saying that they had kind of, limited but freedom of movement. How are things going in Texas related to here these days?
Yes. Well, we have the same thing right now. For example, businesses are allowed to operate with 25% capacity. A lot of businesses can't make it that way, so they're just not opening, because the overhead is the same, whether it's 25% or 100% as far as rent and electricity and things like that. This coming Friday, the 18th, they're supposed to open up and be allowed to do business at 50% capacity. So we'll see then if that's going to bring any of that up. But man, the paranoia, the frustration. I mean, I've seen people, in a store where it's not mandated to wear a mask, but recommended to wear a mask. Somebody walks in not wearing a mask, and people like slam themselves up against the aisles and try to get away from the person, like somehow that's going to protect them. And it's just really, I'm fearful for the paranoia that's happening. And it's kind of telling, I think. A lot of times we turn around and look at this, in Texas, at least, there are no non-essential government jobs. Everybody in the government is still working. And they never did stop working here. I don't know how it was in your state and
Frankie's
local
essential
there in New York, but that was kind of Frankie's essential.
He's essential. I'm non-essential.
Not as a government worker, though. Not as a government worker. But let me ask you as well, Dr. Huber. We're seeing liquor stores being considered essential businesses in places like New York and I think New Jersey and elsewhere. We're seeing an uptick in alcohol sales and alcohol consumption. If people are stuck home and they find themselves drinking more than they normally would, how do folks know if they are actually becoming a problem drinker versus just having an extra glass of wine more than they normally would?
Well, that's a good question. I know we see, 2 weeks ago, I was looking at that and we saw a 420% increase in alcohol liquor sales here in the state of Texas. And I think that was pretty close to what it was nationwide.
Wow.
And, what we usually use as benchmarks is you can't maintain your job, you can't maintain outside relationships. And we don't have that right now. So, we don't have a way to check that. So if you're losing temper with your family members, maybe you should back off the drinking.
Good. Doc, we're going to check back in with you next week. That's Dr. John Huber. Me and Frank will join you again right after this. Stay right there.